Mr. Chisholm, which one of your men is fastest with the iron? That'd be me. Is this too much? Is this too much for a YouTube film? Would you find this remotely distracting if I were to wear this for the next 45 minutes? I don't know. If that was too much, was this, maybe this really isn't enough? Not enough? I don't know. Nondescript? I don't know, I'm not excited by this. How about this? Yeah, I think we found a sweet spot. So I recorded this film the first time while I was in Maine. And then I got in the van and I did some editing and I forgot to pull the films from the compact flash card, the SD card. Hang on, hold the phone. I forgot to pull it from the SD card. And then I made some changes. I took the card out of the computer and then I didn't drag those images to the laptop. So then I went inside and I reformatted the card and then I was filming something else and went back to it and realized I don't have those films anymore. So I ruined it. I ruined it all by myself. But it also had kind of a weird vibe to it. I was in a weird mood that day. It was a little dark. It was a little dark and stormy. And I don't know, I didn't want dark and stormy because I don't think these questions are dark and stormy. So I tried it again. Now, having said that, before I get to the question and answer, this is Q&A 41, I think. I could be wrong about that. It is a Q&A film. I'm one person with one opinion. I appreciate everyone who sent questions in. I have a ton. I have enough for 3 or 4. I'm not going to get to those. I'm going to try to do 8, a grand total of 8. I'm going to try to keep this within 8 hours of recording time. I just had something happen in Adobe Premiere that I can't explain. It's like I saw something in the sky once at night in Texas driving my old Land Cruiser. And I'm not saying it was a UFO. All I'm saying is, to this day, I have no idea what it was. I've never seen anything remotely like it in my entire life, and I have no explanation for what it is. And every time I talk to a friend of mine who's a pilot or in the military and I tell them what I saw, they go, that's not ours. So that's all I'm saying. So something similar just happened to me. I didn't talk to a pilot, and I did manage to get the grill into my van with the help of my friend Larry. Everybody needs a friend named Larry. Larry will do anything at any time and anywhere. Like if we're driving down the road and I said, you know what? God, I really want to rob that liquor store. He'd be like, look, as your friend, I have to advise you that I'm going to be the first one in the door. He will do anything, go anywhere. He helped me get it in, and then I deadlifted that thing out of the van by myself and got it on the patio. But I did what I was supposed to do. I lifted with my back. I kept my legs perfectly straight, and then I just dropped the entire weight out of the van, and I'm fine, so I got it out. I was in Adobe Premiere. I had a film set to go the way I wanted. It's my update film, my random update film, which I'm going to launch sometime later this week. I had it perfectly set. I went back through. I scrolled through it. I watched it all like I do with all the films. It was ready to go. I exported it, went on the desktop, made my thumbnail, dragged them both into the original folder, and just set it aside because I had to make another film. And at the last second, something in my head said, you better check that film before you upload it. So I went back to the exported film, and I kid you not, Adobe Premiere had somehow not only swapped the images that I had in the timeline, but swapped it with images that weren't even from the folder from the project and images that I have never pulled for anything else. It pulled it from random places on the computer. It kept them in the same durations, but it used one image like 7 times. And an image that I never pulled for anything for any reason, it used it. And then it used images that were not from the project. It changed things around. I've never had that happen before. And then anytime I tried to hit a command, like choose a LUT, I would just click. If I did a thing of text, it would not allow me to click on the drop down for the text to control it. I was like, and I'm hitting command save, and then I restarted. I've never had that happen before. It's in there exporting again. It's a 24-minute export because my computer sucks. And so this is the 3rd time I've had to do it. And so now I want to cry and quit and never make films again. But let's talk about question and answers. These are good questions. And the first one is going to be a neck punch. It's going to be a neck punch, not to the person to ask it, but I think to us as creatives in general, because I have a sinking suspicion where we're headed. Because so many people ask me about this in the same time frame, and that is AI. artificial intelligence and what impact it will have on the photo world. But before we talk about AI and the impact that I'm pretty sure it's already having and where it's going to be in a couple of years, let's go back a little bit, because the industry of photography itself, there's a lot of like rumor, innuendo, myth, misconception, and BS. But let's go back to the transition from analog to digital. I've heard a lot of people talking about my take on that, which is often inaccurate. When professional photography went from analog to digital, the professional industry was stagnant. It had been stagnant for years. It was not growing. It was actually shrinking. It was considered a mature industry. That's not a good thing. This is prior to digital. Digital comes in and was like mainlining for professional photography. It was a burst of energy and focus and attention on the field that actually absolutely helped revive professional photography. At the same time, it helped revive the public's thrill and fascination with photography because there was no longer film and processing. It felt like photography was now open and available for anyone who wanted to do it. It was an injection of enthusiasm that the culture had not seen since the Kodak Brownie camera. So overall, I think it was a great thing. Almost immediately, the photographers themselves began to make horrible decisions, financial and business decisions, based on the technology. Instead of photographers saying to a client, look, this is not a film camera, and it's not. Instead of saying, I'm giving you something you've never had before, immediacy of images, unlimited images. Instead of saying that is new, that is valuable, that is strategic, that's going to cost more, because there was no film and processing, a lot of photographers began to give it away for less than film photography. That was a huge mistake. We had many conversations behind the scenes about this at Kodak. I was working for Kodak Professional in '97 when the first real cameras, the DCS 520 and 560, came along. They were $15,000 and $30,000, but they were technically capable enough to do catalog work, fashion work, portraiture, 6-column newspaper images. They were okay. They were good enough to get this stuff done. I was at a shoot in Manhattan Beach, California with a fashion and catalog photographer who was the first guy I ever saw that built that, first of all, was working tethered with a 560, I think it was. And he had built a room in his studio for his clients to sit and watch as the images came up on a big like flat screen TV. And he was shooting in the studio with the models, and the images were tethered in, and the client could just hang out in the green room on the couch and take all this in. I'd never seen that before. He does the shoot for the client, and the client's like, whoa, that was fast. And the photographer's like, yeah, because I invested in all this new technology, and you're getting a digital camera, and there's no snip test at the lab and waiting for film to get back. I'm delivering this now. And the client goes, well, I want to renegotiate. And the photographer's like, well, yeah, we can renegotiate, but you're paying me what the fee was for this because I just delivered what you asked for in this job. And the client balked and said it was too easy. And I remember going back to my boss at Kodak and saying, we need to do something. We need to either get people together or make an announcement or something, because this is going to get away from people really fast if we're not careful. What I didn't realize, it was already too late. The erosion of what photography meant to both the public and the professionals was changing. And so I think there's been a lot of sort of ups and downs of the professional photo industry. I do think it is still a mature industry now. I think it's being obliterated in different ways. I think social media has devalued it to a point where it will never recover from. That's the bulk of things like stock photography, editorial, commercial shoots. I think that's been devalued to a tremendous degree. I still think the fine art world, there's plenty of money to be made in the fine art world, and I see people doing it all the time. It's a game. It's a very unique playing field that you have to understand how to work and adapt, and who you are and what you look like and who you know, and all that stuff comes into play. And AI is coming along. It's already here. I think that there's quite a few folks out there who envision that within whatever, a couple of years or 5 years or 10 years, it's going to be much more prevalent. I'm sort of feeling like it's here now already. It's not perfect. If you've looked at what can be created through AI, how on earth is this not going to impact professional photographers? I think this is going to be a rock in the pond the size of the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. I mean, I think that's probably a good analogy because the software is free. And if I can tell an assistant in the lab, if I'm in a creative agency and we need an image, and I can tell an intern or an assistant in the studio, hey, just go over and AI me an image of whatever, a portrait of someone, blah, blah, blah. And it comes up within a matter of seconds and it's free and it looks as good in many cases already as what professional photographers are already doing. Why would I not do that? Why would I mess with having to deal with another human, a real one, that I have to talk to, that has to call me back, that only has an IG handle and forces me to contact them through IG instead of having a phone number or an email like an adult, like a professional? Why would I have to deal with that and then have to license an image from this person and deal with do they know what licensing is? Do they know what rights managed versus royalty free is? Why would I deal with any of that when I could just have somebody bang out an an AI image? The AI imagery that I've seen so far, some of it is kind of comical, but others are scary good, like really scary good. So AI, in my opinion, and I hope that I am entirely wrong, AI is going to decimate what is left of professional photography. If I'm a automotive photographer, man, some of the stuff I've seen already is really good. And automotive was using CGI extensively for the last decade anyway. Whether it's portraiture or landscape or urban abstract landscape, I've seen all of these done with AI and they are scary good. It makes most of my work look boring because everything is just perfected, like a little bit too perfect, like everything today. I was on Behance, I was on Adobe Behance earlier because I have an account and I can't remember why I set it up. I think it was a test for Blurb or something, and I set up a Behance account and I'm looking at it and I'm like, I don't even remember doing this, but like, why would I use this? What's it for? And when I sort of backed out of my profile and got to the larger Behance feed, it's pretty polished photography. Everything has been very heavily manipulated in a variety of the Adobe Suite products, mostly obviously Photoshop, but I'm looking at it and it's like polished and perfect, and there is not a whole lot of real untouched imagery there. So I think when you look at work like that and you look at something like my work, a reportage story on Tri-X, it looks boring, it looks flat, it looks like nothing because it isn't perfected. And I don't think that's going to end well for a lot of people in the photography world. I think journalism, photojournalism might survive. Oddly enough, the thing that's been on life support for the past couple of decades, maybe photojournalism comes into its own. I do think the smart people are already incorporating AI into their work, and I think this will primarily come through the fine art space, where the people who are good at fine art know how to play that game, and they will know how to manipulate the collectors and the buyers and the curators and the gallerists into playing along with their game. And it will be human versus AI or a merger of the two, and the smart people are working on concepts right now that accentuate that idea. So those are my thoughts on AI. Wow, that was a long one. Did I mention that was number one? Number two, this is a long, long thing. I recently realized that among pictures of greater artistic meaning or long-form project potential, my library has several images of some editorial value. Moreover, I found that going out intentionally to capture images of editorial value is a good way to practice a range of photographic skill. I've recently started a Shutterstock contributors account, selling very little for very little so far. My question is, what would you recommend to someone who practices photography for its storytelling and creative power to pay my bills, but would like to make some side income selling their work? Man, I think I've been asked this before, but so stock, if you're just getting into stock now, then you probably have no concept of what stock used to be. Stock was incredible. I have a friend here in town who I'm pretty sure made 7 figures in stock over the years. And he's still, because he's been sort of grandfathered into the stock world, he shoots stock all the time. And he has it is a comprehensive, detailed system of how he works. And it's impressive. I would never be able to pull it off. And he shoots all over the world wherever he is, no matter what. And he's constantly sending stuff in. And again, he's grandfathered in a way that you will never be. You will never even be invited into those conversations, nor would I. Those people are pretty much gone. I had friends when I was doing stock, this was going back at least 12 to 15 years ago. I think that's when I stopped doing stock. Stock up to that point was great. And then all of a sudden it wasn't. And it died within 6 months. I had friends who were making $20,000 a month in resales alone. So factor that by 12. That's a nice little extra bit of income at the end of the year. They went from $20,000 a month in resales to not shooting and submitting stock at all. That's how fast it died. I was with one of the last independent agencies that hadn't sold out to the two big agencies, and our agency went bankrupt, and it was a race to the bottom, and it was ugly and awful, and I just was like, I don't want any part of this anymore. So stock is not a place that I would personally spend a lot of time. But there's something you have to do prior to even asking yourself if you're going to make money. Is your work good? Are you any good? Are you making things that are interesting, different, better? Because I've had quite a few people reach out to me asking about making money on the side, and when I saw their photographs, they were not good. They're not even remotely good. They were so bad they didn't know they were bad. So you can't just shoot random state fair pictures and put them online and think that people are going to go, wow, that's really fantastic. I'll give you $300 for that. My advice would be to sell prints. Just make prints. You can get an inkjet printer at home, or even better, source it out to a local lab, because if it's not printed right, they'll reprint it. Or print it out, source it to someone who can print it and frame it in case the customer wants that. But just take your 10 best images and create a site where you're able to sell those. I would do that, because you can do a $300, $500, $1,000, $1,500 print sale. You know how long it's going to take to make that in stock, depending on what you are and who you're doing. So print sales, and then you're not having to deal with anybody else's stuff. Agency licensing agreements and model releases and location releases and permits and all the things that you have to get images into a stock agency. Is you're just selling a print, just sell a print. That's what I would do. Or I would, get a job as a dancer. Do something like that. It's exciting. It's sweaty. Okay, question number 3. How to do a project in short term. I'm going to the Maldives for 3 months. And how do I do a project in the short term? Hold the phone, Chuck. 3 months. I don't know who wrote this in, but whoever you are, I like you. I like you. What are you going to go with? English gentleman? Time to musk up. 3 months is not a short time to go on assignment. 3 months is longer than anyone I know in recent past of having 3 months on an assignment. I know a guy who was working for a very famous magazine who got an assignment to do 6 countries in 18 days with a shot list. That is pure hell. That only looks good to fakers on Instagram who want to tell everybody what airport they're in. Like, who cares how many countries you went to? But if someone came to me and said, we're giving you an 18-day assignment and you have to go to 6 countries, I would say no. I have no interest in working that way. The person who did that assignment did not make good images at all. They just cranked out the crap that the parent company thought that they wanted. Not a good thing. If you have 3 months on your own to work on whatever project in the Maldives that you want to work on, that is heaven, man. Take your time, but at the same time, work your butt off. Because if you think you're going back to the Maldives, and maybe you live there part-time, I don't know. Most of the time, I always think when I'm going back somewhere, I'll come back here and finish this. I never get to go back. I still think about Cambodia in 96. I thought I'd be back in 97, and I still haven't been back. So whatever you do it now, but take your time and just work comprehensively. I think 3 months is a gift that is hard to even comprehend right now. And so other than that, write as much as possible, talk to as many people as possible, and shoot every day. If your primary goal of being in the Maldives is to do a photo essay, shoot every day. Number 4, I'm preparing myself first documentary photo project about the city of the dead in Cairo. That sounds interesting. Doing lots of research. By the way, my interview with Sarah Lean is coming up. She was the first female photo director of Nat Geo, the first female winner of College Photographer of the Year, female photo editor at Nat Geo, did 25 assignments, 4 covers, all these different things. We talk about research. And for all you slackers out there, all you hipsters on Instagram and all the people who say, oh, I don't really want to get influenced by all the BS excuses I hear about doing research, wait till you hear what she says about research. There ain't no way around it, people. None. So do it. I'm glad this Egypt person is going to be doing research. Reading books, watching movies. I know I will need a fixer. My question is, how do you find a good fixer? I know there are Facebook groups, dedicated websites, but how do you recognize a good one? The good fixers have reputations. There's a guy in northern Mexico, for example, who most of the photographers I know who go through there work with him. I don't remember his name, But he has a reputation, and in fact, when photographers are hired to work in that environment, which is a very, very dicey place these days, they will often request him specifically, and if they can't get him specifically, they will not do the assignment because they don't want to put their life in the hands of someone who's not that dialed. So there used to be a website, and I have no idea if they're still around. It's called Light Stalkers. And Light Stalkers was like a photojournalism network around the world where people would post where they were, what they were doing, what they were capable of, their contact info, some images. And it was also a networking thing where you could go on and often find like, hey, I'm going to Cairo. Does anybody know a good fixer? That way it's a little more narrowed than Facebook. And again, I've been on Facebook since 2014. So I have no idea how any of that works or how I would go through Facebook to do that. I'm sure there is. But again, you're talking to photographers who've already been there, who have already worked with these people. That's really the key. It's curation of what you're talking about. You're talking about curation, damn it. And it says, I know I will be looking like a walking cash machine, even if I will wear cheap clothes, not exposing my photo gear. Well, here's the only rub to that. A friend of mine was just robbed, carjacked at gunpoint at 1:30 in the afternoon in a grocery store parking lot a half a mile from the Santa Fe Plaza in the middle of the week with people all around. And a guy just walked up to him with a gun and said, I don't care about you and I will flat out murder you right now if you don't give me those car keys. And my friend gave him the car keys. So this can happen anywhere at any time. I have only been, I don't think I've been robbed of my equipment ever. I've been jumped and had to fight people. I had a kid in Cambodia walk up to me with an AK and ask for $1, which I was like, you know what? Money well spent. Let me check my finances. Yes, that's in my budget. Extortion, no problem. I'll just write that off back at home. But and there were people all over the place. But he had I don't know if it was an AK or not. Could have been a knockoff. He had that and I didn't. So that's it. But I wouldn't worry too much about that. But again, don't go in there like camera club guy with the vest and 3 lenses with zooms and drives and a flash and like hauling a wagon with all your extra stuff. Just keep it simple. Number 5. I assume you would get burnout when you shot every day for a living. How do you recharge yourself mentally, even when you had to shoot day after day? In addition, do you have any suggestions on connecting with your subjects, even when there's someone you didn't care to document? So burnout has not been an issue for me at all. I want to work and make pictures now as much as I ever have. I just don't have time to do it. So shooting every day to me was a luxury. It was great. The newspaper was the best place in the world for that because of the diversity of assignment that I would get. Every day was a combination of absolute thrills combined with absolute 5-star anger combined with fear. Fear of missing an image, fear of the editor, fear of missing a deadline, fear of doing something that I wasn't supposed to do, fear of someone in the field doing something to me because I was representing the paper. Thrilled because when you nailed it, and you knew it, and you're like, I killed it, and then it went into a paper that was seeing 1 million+ circulation. That was kind of fun. And then also anger because the frustration of being bossed around by people at the paper, which is the hierarchy of how a newspaper works. Your editors call the guy who's working the desk that day is 911 paging you all day long saying, do this now, do this. It's 115 degrees. You're punching the inside of your car. It's not a job that a lot of people last over time. When I see newspaper photographers who've been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years, I'm like, tip my hat, I'm in awe. So I was not getting burned out even when I was shooting every day. The only thing that happened to me was when I got into doing genres of photography that I knew were not who I really was. I was making a lot of money, but I was doing stuff like, this is not me. At the end of a shoot, I felt relief. And I was just like, get me away from this. At the end of these shoots, I wouldn't be able to talk to anyone. I couldn't talk to my wife. I couldn't talk to my friends. I would just go by myself off somewhere and deal with the shame of what I had been doing for money. And I could make a really bad joke about that right now, but I'll refrain in fear of offending yet someone else, like when I spoke about box speed. And they turned on me. The masses turned on me like savages, like hyenas turning on a cub of some sort on the African savannah. By the way, have you ever been to Ethiopia? I think I want to go to Ethiopia. Okay, so I didn't get burned out. And do you have any suggestions on how to connecting with your subjects even when there's someone you didn't care to document? Look, if you're on assignment, it doesn't matter what you care about. You have a job. Your job is to go make the best pictures you can, regardless of what your subject matter is. You don't get to dictate. That's a hipster thing. That's a snowflake modern thing where 99% of the people I run into in my life, I'm like, I have nothing in common with this person. I have family members where I'm like, I have nothing in common with these folks. But I'll give you an example. I got assigned once to do a story about a guy. I don't remember why I was doing the story on him. I don't remember why he was interesting. The paper thought he was. I'm driving a Toyota pickup. I show up at his house, and he is a former auto worker from Detroit, which I don't know. So he looks out his front door and sees me parking a Toyota on his lawn and goes berserk and starts screaming at me to get that piece of crap Japanese-made vehicle off of his property, and I end up having to drive down the road and find some pull-off and park and walk back. And I'm like, initially, what an a-hole. But you know what? I got to go spend time with this guy. And so I was like, okay, I get it. The big three, they're hurting. Toyota came in, Honda came in. This is the same thing that happened to Kodak. Kodak thought they were the king of the world. Kodak thought that no one would ever depart from the great yellow father. And along came Fuji. And Fujifilm was really good. And guess what? It was cheap. It was a lot cheaper than Kodak. And guess what? If Kodak lowered their price, the next day Fuji would go even lower. So they had this incredible advantage. And Kodak learned the hard way. Talk about a neck punch. Kodak went down. It was like an MMA fight. They got choked out by Fuji. And this guy, I realized as I'm sitting there, he's in the same boat. Toyota came along, Honda came along. Now we got Hyundai, we got Kia, we got all these other brands. And they are just crushing the American brands because they weren't innovating. And they're making these enormous vehicles for no apparent reason. Not to say that there aren't American vehicles I like, but the analogy is the same. The lesson, the moral of this story is the same. So I had to shift my perspective and say, okay, he's pissed. I get it. By the end of the afternoon, we were buds. We weren't chewing tobacco together. We weren't shotgunning beers together, but we were like simpatico. He knew I had a job to do. And he vented, and I understood what he was mad about. And that's it. You get on with it, and you do this because the photographs are the only thing that matters. Your personal beliefs and all that. If you're going to work for someone else or you're going to go do documentary projects, what's the point of doing a project or always doing projects with people that you're in the same camp with? I would love to get into some of the camps that are people that have a different philosophy in life than I do. That's really interesting. Plus, the camera is this weird permission slip to come in, and if you're working with people over time, they begin to understand that this is not a hobby, that this is a real job, and that they see the amount of time and effort and energy you're putting in. And often, as a photographer, you're the one pushing them, saying more, 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 let's go. And people are like, whoa, I had no idea. I thought this was gonna be a 5-minute thing, and you've been here for 3 days. Like, you've got like a duffel bag in my living room. Yeah, I'm not leaving. And so, that's it. You don't get burned out. And you work hard, and you work with anybody that you get a chance to work with. Because that camera is your escape valve. Because even when you're a group of people, and you're working, and you are vehemently opposed to their ideology, you can question them. You can bring things up and say, you're saying this, but I'm seeing this. And because you're there with the camera, and you're there working as a job, you often get a bit of leniency. They don't normally turn around and start swinging. They may turn around and say, you don't know what you're talking about or whatever. And you're like, look, I'm just listening. I'm seeing what's happening here. Like, tell me what's happening. Camera's your safety. Number 6, do you use the film simulations on the Fuji? No. I've heard they're great, but once I pull images into Lightroom, I'm going to manipulate them anyway. I'm going to apply a preset there. So why would I apply a preset in the camera when I'm going to apply one in Lightroom? There's probably a reason why. I just don't know and I don't care. Now, having said that, I borrowed an X Pro 3, and I noticed that on the back of it, where normally the preview screen is, on the X Pro 3, there's not a preview screen, which I love. I love the fact that to preview your images, you have to pull that screen down and hit the play button. That's a nice little hurdle obstacle to keep you from chimping in the field. But I also noticed on the back of that screen, when it's closed, there is that little square that will have the Fuji film simulation options on it, like the old days when we used to tear off the end of the box and slip it in that thing on the back to remind you what kind of film you're shooting. I love that quirky X Pro 3. I think that's a great camera. It is incredibly light. It reminds me of the Leica. And so I noticed on there that it was set to classic chrome, I believe. But again, I'm going into Lightroom and applying a preset anyway. So I'm not sure. If I was shooting JPEGs and exporting JPEGs and sending those to someone on a deadline, then I might use those film simulations. And frankly, I am using the film simulations. I'm just not staying with them once they get into Lightroom. Number 7, what time do you go to bed? What time do you get up? What's your routine? I love these non-photography questions because sometimes the photo stuff gets old and my life is a lot more wide-ranging, I guess you could say. I told you about my prowess stuffing grills into vans, that kind of thing that you may not know on the surface by looking at me because of my sophistication level, which is so high. I go to bed early and I get up early. So today I got up at 5. Yesterday I got up at 5. I love getting up early. I love getting reading in and my coffee in while I'm watching the sunrise come over the Sangres. That's like my favorite part of the day. The day just gradually turns to crap after that. So that first couple of minutes is prime. I want to get up early. Consequently, I go to bed early. I've never been a night owl. I've always been a morning person. I much prefer to read, go to sleep early, get up early, and get out there. My routine varies depending on what kind of workload I have. I try not to vary certain aspects of it. I never get up and get on my phone. I think that's one of the worst things that humans can possibly do. If the first thing you do in the morning is grab your phone, or the last thing you do at night is look at your phone before you go to bed, that is a horrible habit that you should break as soon as possible. So the phone is charging in the other room. I always read. I read paper books. This one is good, Fossil Men, by the way. This is the 3rd book I've read this week. And people are like, oh, I can't believe you take all that time to read. I don't. I just use the same time that other people waste to read. And all I need is an hour in the morning. I also sit in the sauna, try to sit in my little portable sauna for 40 minutes a day. That's been very helpful for me health-wise over the years. I read when I'm in there. And then I'm either going to do my yoga routine, I'm going to run, or I'm going to ride. Now that my bike is broken, and my other bike I gave to a long-term loan. I don't have a bike right now, which is a bummer. And I'm trying to remedy that. So I'm either running, riding, or yoga, or a combination of those. And then it is just work, 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 work. My blurb to-do list on these days is as long and as complex as I've ever had. So I've got a lot on my plate, and that's really it. A last question, how do you approach someone else's work? How do you critique a bunch of pictures or even a single picture? That's a great question, and it's been popular as of late because I try not to critique other people's work these days, especially if you are someone who is trying to make a living as a photographer. I have not made my living as a photographer since 2010, and I have no intention of ever doing so again. I don't want to, and the reason why I would not want to critique a lot of work is because I don't know as much about the industry as I did back then. So what people are doing today is probably different than what they were doing back then, and I would not want to give someone bad advice. The one thing that I bring to a critique is what happens before we look at images. And this is the part that is the most important takeaway, because there is a glaring hole in these portfolio reviews, in my opinion, and there is a glaring hole in the professional creative industries in general. When someone sits down in front of me, first of all, I'm looking at them, I'm listening to their vocabulary, I'm looking at how they're dressed, how they carry themselves, and how they're showing me their work. Is it an iPad or is it a box of prints? That makes a huge difference. If it's prints and I ask them why they did that, they typically have an answer. If it's an iPad and I ask, they typically don't. So iPad editing is often sloppy, too many images in galleries, too many subpar images, laziness. Prints, not so much because they're having to pay for them. But my question to them is always, why are you here? Why am I sitting in front of you? Why are you showing me this work? Why is it important? And do you know what it means to be a creative member of society? 99.9% of the people I meet with cannot answer those questions at all. That is a glaring hole. If you are a photographer and you are going to a portfolio review, now you may get lucky. A lot of people who do these reviews, the reviewers, they're going through the motions. It's not like they're not looking for a diamond in the rough. They are. But some of them are just doing the same routine. They may have a phone sitting there. They've got a long to-do list. They're kind of doing this. That's not me. Remember, I tried to get out of reviewing in the first place, but somehow I get suckered into it, and I'm at that event, and you sit down in front of me, and I go, why am I looking at this? Why is this important? Who are you? Do you know what it means to be creative? And you're like, I don't know. That's where the fun begins. Because being a creative member of society means that you are a contributor to the GDP. And that is on par with things like mining. The creative industry is a significant contributor to the GDP. Being creative comes with power. It comes with license. It comes with ability. And if you are not taking advantage of that, you have no chance at a career. You might get lucky. You might do some stupid viral thing that gets you attention for a short time. You might learn how to cross-process film and you might get 18 months of celebrity and then it's over. If you want a career, you better have an understanding of what it means to be creative, what inherent power comes with that, how to harness that power, how to use it, and how not to abuse that power, and also how to use it to expand the impact of what your work is. If you are making photography books, for example, for other photographers, you're dead in the water. Like, how many books are you going to make? Yes, photographers will buy each other's books, but that's not interesting to me. You're preaching to the choir. Make a book for the general public and get the general public interested in why a photography book is important. That's interesting. That's far more interesting and has far more legs than just making stuff for other geeks out there who want to look at your work because you used an M6 or whatever to make this stuff. Who cares? That's that's tiny thinking. What I'm looking for is a little bit broader. So oftentimes when I'm critiquing stuff, I will go through a photo critique without looking at anyone's work. And I know that may sound bizarre. The last time this happened was in San Francisco, and I tried to talk them out of having me as a reviewer. And they said, no, we really want you. And I said, okay. And so I sat down, and the first person slid their laptop across at me, and I said, why am I looking at this, and why is this important, and why are you doing it, and do you know what it means? And they said, no. And we talked for about 20 minutes, which is typically the allocation of time. And I said at the end, okay, do you want me to look at your work? And they said, no, I want you to keep talking about what you're talking about. And so this happened like 3 times in a row. I never looked at anybody's work. And then someone came up, so one of the organizers said, can I speak to you? And I was like, here we go. They're going to throw me out. And she said, what are you telling people? And I said the same thing. I said, do you know why you're here? Do you know what creative? And she goes, because someone came up to us and said they just had the best portfolio review they've ever had, and the person never looked at their work. Not to blow my own horn, I'm just asking basic stuff, people. It's just basic stuff. Who cares how many fluoride elements are in your lens? Who cares how many Instagram followers you have? Who cares if your everyday carry looks great on a top-down view? All of that BS is meaningless. It's meaningless in not only the grand scheme of things, but it's meaningless on a day-to-day value, on a day-to-day thing. All right, how's that for a Q&A? I got to get back to work, people. I can't keep sitting around here wasting time. So that was it. I'm one person with one opinion. I appreciate it. Thanks for writing in with your questions, and for everybody who sent this massive list of other questions, I will eventually get there, but it's going to be a while because this week is going to, as of tomorrow, it starts to get pure crazy. It's getting really crazy, people. I'll be back.